Donald Trump just locked the British Empire out of the Ukraine peace negotiations. Here's a senior fellow at Britain's premier foreign policy outlet, Chatham House, admitting it on record. Europe is not involved because the United States has not seen the need to involve Europe. Translation: Trump threw them off the stage of history, which he is now dominating, and all they can do is whimper. But it isn't just about stopping war in Europe, as big as that is. This is a mortal battle between two systems: the American system of building the real economy and securing peace versus the British imperial system of free trade, financial looting, and perpetual war. And right now, Trump is taking a jackhammer to the very foundations of that dying British system. Now, Canadian Prime Minister and ex-central banker Mark Carney tried to pretend that the imperial system which he serves isn't dying. At last week's G20 summit in South Africa, which the United States did not attend, Carney postured that everything was okay, that the summit did the following.
This year's G20 summit brought together nations representing 3/4 of the world's population, 2/3 of global GDP, and 3/4 of the world's trade. And that's without the United States formally attending. It's a reminder that the center of gravity in the global economy is shifting.
Well, the center of gravity is shifting, but not the way Carney hopes. Carney's running around trying to reposition Canada as some kind of major broker. He just came up with a $50 billion deal between Canada and Abu Dhabi. Well, here's what Trump just landed.
And yesterday, the Crown Prince announced that the number that they'll be investing in the United States is $1 trillion. So that's really an honor. And we just took a picture backstage with some of the great business leaders and some of the great people, friends of mine from your country, and beautiful picture. And while we were taking the picture, I said, could you make it 1.5 trillion? So he's got something to think about.
The contrast between 50 billion and 1 trillion says it all. Donald Trump is reshaping the world economically and strategically. And if you're paying attention to what this administration is actually doing, rather than getting caught up in the world of social media psyops, you'll see that we're in the middle of an absolutely historic shift. I'm Susan Kokinda, and for decades, I've been fighting against this imperial system and its sabotage of American sovereignty. What Trump is doing right now is systematically dismantling their control over war and money, the two main weapons that they've used to keep nations enslaved. So if this is your kind of analysis, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Today, I'm going to show you three things. First, how Trump is closing in on peace in Ukraine precisely because he left the British and the neocons out in the cold. Second, how Trump's economic revolution is exposing the pathetic irrelevance of institutions like the G20 and the climate change regime. And third, what's really driving Trump's revolution and why it terrifies the empire more than anything else. Trump is on the verge of achieving peace in Ukraine for one simple reason. He didn't invite the British or the neocons to the negotiating table. Now, the British imperial mouthpieces at Chatham House are having a meltdown. And don't forget, Chatham House was established over about 100 years ago to try and keep the United States in the British fold. So listen to what their so-called experts are now saying. This is Orysia Lutsevich, who, by the way, also consults for George Soros's Open Society Foundation, admitting that, quote, Europe is launching a massive rearmament program that will substantially contribute to both deterrence and the defense of Ukraine. The goal of those backroom Witkov-Dmitriev, i.e. U.S.-Russian negotiations, is to obstruct this resolve. Think about what she just admitted. They want more war, more weapons, and more death. And Trump's peace negotiations are getting in the way. But it's not just the British establishment that's out in the open. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt Monday hit at the people in the United States who don't want the war to end. She was responding to misrepresentations of administration actions, and she said,
I have watched as the president and his team have worked around the clock overnight with both sides on endless phone calls, endless meetings to try to bring this war to a close. And any suggestion otherwise is a complete misunderstanding of the facts. It's coming from people who have no idea what they're talking about, or people who are pushing their own agenda, or maybe people who don't want to see this war come to an end. I don't know. Maybe they're profiting off of it.
And J.D. Vance has been in a running battle with the uber warhawk Mitch McConnell since last week, when McConnell accused Trump's team of capitulating to Putin and suggested that Trump should get a new team. Vance truthed out, "This is a ridiculous attack on the president's team, which has worked tirelessly to clean up the mess in Ukraine that Mitch, always eager to write blank checks to Britain's foreign policy, left us." Then Vance doubled down, going after what he called the Beltway GOP, that gets more passionate about Ukraine than about the economic crisis here in our own country. JD said, "But you know what really fires up the Beltway GOP? Not any of the above. Instead, the political class is really angry that the Trump administration may finally bring a 4-year conflict in Eastern Europe to a close. The level of passion over this one issue, when your own country has serious problems, is bonkers. It disgusts me. Show some passion for your own country." Now, that's the difference between Trump's American First Revolution and the globalist addiction to endless war. Trump is negotiating peace because he excluded the people whose entire system depends on war. And here's what the establishment doesn't want you to understand. The British imperial model has always relied on two things: perpetual war and financial control. War keeps nations at each other's throats, and central banks and free trade keep them at the mercy of the monetary power. The American system is based on peace, sovereignty, and economic development, and Trump is reestablishing that system. Now, if you're missing this historic development because you're too caught up in the clickbait and the headlines that are purposely distracting and disorienting you, it's time for you to subscribe to Promethean Action's free newsletter. We will give you the updates and provide you with the history, economics, and analysis you need to be effective. So head on over to Promethean Action. Now, let's contrast what Trump is doing to reshape the world economy with trillions of dollars of economic deals to the pathetic spectacle of the G20 summit and the dying climate change movement. First, look at who didn't show up to the G20 in South Africa. Trump, Putin, and Xi Jinping, the leaders who actually matter, were no-shows. And who were the so-called stars of the show? The EU's Ursula von der Leyen and Mark Carney, whose faces grace the streets of Johannesburg, and failing leaders like Merz, Starmer, and Macron. And all the final G20's declaration could do was sing the old tired songs about sustainability, gender equality, and climate change. Meanwhile, the real economic action is happening with Trump's bilateral deals that are bringing trillions into the U.S. economy. Now, speaking of climate change, remember when every climate summit was front-page news, heralding the end of the world because of global warming? Well, the COP30 climate change summit just took place in Brazil. Trump didn't attend, neither did Xi Jinping or Putin. But don't worry, the monarchy was represented. Prince William showed up to give the keynote speech. And here's the kicker. Even COP30 backed away from its own insane agenda to phase out fossil fuels. The final decision contains no explicit commitments to phase out or transition away from fossil fuels. Why? Because Trump is leading a global revolt against environmental extremism. Back in the United States, the Department of Energy just eliminated its climate change offices. The Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy and the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations are no more. They've been subordinated to an office which is focused on producing real energy independence. This is the new American system in action, no longer surrendering to imperial policies of free trade and environmentalism. Now, Trump's victories on the international front, settling wars, ending environmental insanity, forging incredible bilateral economic deals, are all part of the same revolution, restoring the American system that built us into a great industrial sovereign nation. And here's what makes the American system so powerful. It's not just about tariffs and industry. It's about unleashing the creative power of the human mind to break old ways of thinking and discover something new and better. While the imperial model is based on control of money and fixed resources, the American system knows that human creativity can foster genuine physical growth and make the pie bigger. And this administration is now demonstrating that they know they have to communicate that to the American people. In a recent interview, Trump's special trade counselor, Peter Navarro, said, "We've gotten the memo on the need to explain that growing the real physical economy will bring down inflation." And all of Trump's economic advisors are now drilling down on these critical concepts in housing, food, and healthcare costs. And Trump himself reflected this sharpened focus, speaking about the impact that the foreign investments he organized from Saudi Arabia are having.
Every new job and every new factory created by these announcements builds up our middle class and really strengthens the industrial backbone of America. And, I view it differently. I used to view it as it's great, great, great. The stock goes up. I view it, everything as jobs now because I don't care. I care about jobs.
Trump is pivoting from Wall Street to Main Street, from stock prices to wages. But there's something even deeper driving this revolution, something that America at its best has always excelled at: unleashing the creative powers of the human mind to break old ways of thinking and discover something new and better. There was a remarkable dialogue between J.D. Vance and HHS Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. at a recent MAHA conference. Here's what RFK Jr. said.
And that is, that's what science is. It's recognizing that convention is often wrong, and that the people who make advances on science almost 100% of the times are people who are willing to challenge orthodoxies and advance heterodoxies and talk about new ways of thinking.
This is the essence of the American system: the willingness to challenge convention, to innovate, to reject the dead hand of imperial rules. And it's why the British Empire has always tried to destroy these American system policies. Because when America operates on these principles, we become too powerful for them to control. And Trump is reviving this tradition. That's what terrifies them. So here's what you need to understand. While the global elite gathered at their increasingly irrelevant summits, Trump is busy rewriting the rules of international relations and economics. He's negotiating peace deals with Ukraine by excluding the warmongers. He's securing trillion-dollar investments while the G20 pretends it still matters. He's dismantling the climate change agenda that was designed to deindustrialize America. And most importantly, he's reviving the spirit that built this country into a superpower. The British imperial system, which has controlled global finance and geopolitics for centuries, is watching its power slip away. And all their spokesman can do is whimper about how Europe is not involved or how the center of gravity is shifting. Well, they're right about one thing. The center of gravity is shifting, but not away from America. It's shifting away from them. Trump has shown us the path forward, but he can't do it alone. He needs an informed citizenry that can see through the fog of psyops and war to the strategic victory ahead. So if you want to understand this fight at a deeper level, become part of our community that can think and act strategically, not just react to the latest headlines. So go to Promethean Action, become a member or a contributor. This has been your midweek update for Thanksgiving week. I think we have a lot to be thankful for. So have a happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for watching.